This is going to be a really special build because this case right here is one of the smallest micro ATX cases that you can find on the market today. I paid about $128 Canadian after taxes, which comes out to roughly $97 US. So the size of this case is almost like in a mini ITX case, but this is actually a micro ATX case. So you're going to be able to put lots of different motherboards in here. And not only that, it actually supports a full ATX power supply. There's not a lot of cases on the market that are that tiny and still support full ATX power supply. You can actually put up to a 360mm AIO in this PC, along with a 338mm graphics card. So you got plenty of space in this tiny little case. And one of the other key features that I was looking for in a small case was a front USB 3.2 Gen 2 USB-C. This case has it. So that means you're going to be able to plug in a fast portable SSD and you're not going to have to go around to the back to plug it in. So that's the best part. And if you're wondering what kind of hardware I'm going to be using today for this build, let me go over it real quick. This is not going to be my primary PC. This is actually going to be my secondary PC. I'm going to be using this PC as my streaming PC while I game on my gaming PC. ASUS is really surprising me with their build quality and their prices lately. I was in the market for the cheapest B550 board with Wi-Fi, and it happened to be this ASUS Prime B550M-A Wi-Fi 2. And we're going to be pairing this board with the cheapest Ryzen 5 processor, which is a Ryzen 5 5500. It is great at gaming, but in this build it doesn't really matter since this is going to be a streaming build anyway. And for the graphics card, I wanted to go with an AMD, but unfortunately AMD graphics card doesn't support NVIDIA broadcast software. And NVIDIA broadcast software actually lets you blur the background, or you can remove the background at all completely. It lets you have things like noise suppression. I wanted to find the cheapest RTX graphics card that supported NVIDIA broadcasts, and it happened to be the RTX 2060. So I went on the used market and I bought this RTX 2060 6GB from EVGA for only 150 bucks. And for RAM, we're going with DDR4 16GB, 3200 MHz CL16. For NVMe, we got Western Digital Blue SN570 500GB. We've got a DEEPCOOL PK600D power supply, which is rated at 600 watts, 80 plus bronze, and that's going to be plenty of power for this build. So now let's go ahead and get this case unboxed. I'm really excited to see it for the first time. This is actually white in color. You can also get it in black. Wow, I can't believe it. This is actually a really small case. And it's actually not that light. Even though it's completely empty right now, this is not a light case by any means. So that probably means it has a good build quality, but we'll find out pretty quick. And this is it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm impressed. I've actually never seen a case like this before. So it looks like it has one fan already installed on the back. So let's figure out how to open this bad boy. There we go. There's a little place where you can put your finger and you just press it outwards and the panel pops off. And you just pull it up. This is what the inside of the case looks. Let's go ahead and pop the back panel off as well. And it says ASUS Prime case right here. And it also says ASUS Prime case on one of the panels. And looks like they have included some hardware right here. I also just noticed the rear fan says Prime on it. So that's the ASUS Prime logo. So that's also a nice little touch. So how it works out in this case is that you plug in your regular power supply cable up at the top here, and then this cable goes up along the top, and here's the actual plug for the power supply, because the power supply in this PC is mounted at the top, and it is mounted not horizontally, it's actually mounted vertically. So since this PC case only ships out with one fan at the rear, I'm not going to add any additional fans in this PC. We'll just be throwing in the RX 5500 in there with the stock Rate Stealth cooler and the RTX 2060. We'll be checking out the thermals with some benchmarks and some gaming. That should give you some idea of this PC case thermals. And before we install the motherboard in the case, I'm going to go ahead and install the rear I/O shield. And with the rear I/O being in its place, now we can finally go ahead and install the motherboard in the case as well. Shouldn't be too hard. So it looks like this case actually has 3 different mounting positions for this bracket. You can mount it really high, or you can mount it in the middle, or you can mount it at the really bottom position, which will hang the GPU really low. So if you have a graphics card that is really long, you might want to shift your PSU a little bit higher up. Now let's go ahead and unbox this power supply and get it installed in our power supply shroud. The power cable coming from the case is going to go to the top of the power supply, and you want the power supply sucking in fresh air from the front of the case. And let me show you how that's going to look like. So we just slide this over top of our PSU and you screw it down with 4 screws, and then we're just going to hang it inside the case and screw it with 2 screws at the bottom. Now that the power supply is tightened down in this power supply shroud, let's go ahead and hook it up inside the case. I just realized that my camera's battery died, so I'm recording on my phone now. I just went ahead and hooked up the power supply, and this is how it looks. So as you can see, this is where you would plug in the case from the back with your power supply cable. And it runs along all the way, and then it plugs into the power supply up here at the top. And the power supply is mounted vertically, and all the power supply cables are coming down here at the bottom. So what I'm going to do now is run all the cables and do the cable management, and then I'll give you a nice close-up look at the PC. All the cables are hooked up, and I'll show you how I did the cable management at the back. It turned out really neat. It's nice that this case comes with the removable PCIe covers. That shows ASUS is paying attention to little details, because at this price point you don't want break-off PCIe covers. Now let's go ahead and install our graphics card and hook up the power cable, and then we'll finish up the build by installing the cover plate back on. And I'm going to go ahead and save these for later. And it's finally the time I've been waiting for. Let's go ahead and throw this GPU inside the case. This RTX 2060 is going to be a perfect GPU for what we're trying to achieve with this build. Here we are, the GPU's in, and now I'm going to hook up the power cable. Now that the GPU is in, I'm going to install the plate back in. Installing this plate will hide all the cables that are underneath your power supply, so all the spare cables will be hidden. But if you are running a big graphics card, which requires more length. You can always remove the plate and move the power supply a couple notches up, and that should give you more clearance for a bigger graphics card. And just like that, this build is complete. And what's weird is the power supply switch is inside the case. This is not usual. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it on because we're gonna be closing the lids on both sides. But before I do that, I'm gonna give you a nice 360 look on this PC. And here we are. All the panels were able to pop back on, and this build is now complete. This PC actually looks really amazing. I've never built a PC like this before. I can't wait to turn it on for the first time. Fingers crossed, I hope it boots up without any issues. So now I'm gonna go ahead and boot it up for the first time and install Windows in it, and then we'll do some benchmarking and some gaming testing, so stay tuned. Let's go ahead and turn this PC on for the first time. Here we are. Hopefully it boots up. And by the way, I have a small toolbox for a size comparison. So as you can see, it's not any bigger than a little toolbox. I even have my subwoofer in the background, so you can tell that this PC is not that big at all. And that's the screen I was hoping for. We have successfully booted this PC for the first time without any issues. Now I'm gonna go ahead and install Windows, and I'll see you in a little bit, and we're gonna go ahead and do the benchmarking. So I'm about to run the Cinebench R23 on this PC, and this is what the temperature is looking like right now. So let me just go over it real quick. So our CPU is hovering at about 47 degrees right now, and that's because I am running OBS in the background. But this is what the stats look like in the hardware monitor when there's barely any stress on the PC. So now I'm gonna go ahead and run the Cinebench R23 on multi-core and single core, and I'll be back with the results. We just finished the Cinebench R23 multi-core test, and we got a score of 10,452, and the max CPU temperature that we reached during this test was 87.9 degrees. We consumed about 63 watts at the maximum. Now let's go ahead and run the single core test and see how it does. Just finished the Cinebench R23 single core test and we got a score of 1367. This time our CPU only saw a maximum temp of 52 degrees and it only consumed about 18 watts at the max.